In our today's lecture, we will discuss about LD 50 by 60, and first of all we will explain it by definition. And according to the definition, the LD 50 by 60 is the dose of radiation to the whole body that can cause 50% of the irradiated subjects to die within 60 days. So 50% is basically the lethality rate, and 60 is the survival time, we can say. So this is the lower dose that is basically required to cause death of approximately 50% of the irradiated subjects to die within 60 days. So that's why we call it LD 50 by 60. Now we will explain this through the graph, and according to this graph you can see that we have taken the radiation dose in GYT, and we have taken it on x-axis, and on y-axis we have taken a lethality rate, and we are presenting it in percentage. So you can see that we have plotted a line as well, and according to this line we need at least 350 rads, or we can say 3.5 GYT to cause at least 50% lethality. So another very important thing is, you can see at lower dosage there is no death expected of the subjects, but as the dose is increasing, you can see that approximately 600 rads, let's suppose 600 rads or 6 GYT, all those irradiated subjects are supposed to die unless there is vigorous medical support available. Above 1000 rad, or we can say 10 GYT, even this medical support will not be enough to prevent the death. So the death will be obvious at this much dose, and the we can say lethality rate will be maximum. And other scenario, you can see that when the dosage is low, for example 1 GYT, the lethality rate is also very less, so we can say zero, approximately zero. So there requires at least 350 rads or 3.5 GYT to cause at least 50% lethality rate of the irradiated subjects. So if the dose is enough to cause 50% lethality, then the death will occur within 60 days of exposure. There are some other measures as well. First of all, this is LD 50 by 60 is the major quantitative measurement of the acute radiation lethality that is an emergency condition. So we measure the acute radiation lethality by LD 50 by 60. That is approximately 350 rads or 3.5 GYT for human beings. And with sport, humans can tolerate much higher doses, and that maximum highest dose that has been reported is 850 rad or 8.5 GYT. There are some additional measures of acute lethality as well, and we identify them as LD 10 by 60 and LD 90 by 60, and you may get the idea that this indicates a dose that is resulting in 10% and 90% lethality rate within 60 days. So the survival time or the death time is not changing, but the lethality rate is changing in LD 10 by 60 and LD 90 by 60. Another measure is the LD 50/30, that is the lethal dose to 50% of subjects when the observed survival time is shortened to 30 days. So we are in this scenario or in this measure are decreasing or shortening the survival time, and we have shortened it to 30 days, and that is similar to LD 50/60, because just like LD 50/60, the lethality rate is same, that is 50%, but the survival time has shortened to 30 days. So we have covered the topic, and we will summarize LD 50/60 in points. So the first thing that we studied is that LD 50/60 is basically a lower dose that is basically required to cause the death, we can say, within 60 days to the subjects that are 50% irradiated. So we concluded through this through this graph that we have taken two factors, and these are radiation dose and lethality rate, and we have taken radiation dose on x-axis and lethality rate on y-axis. So we require at least 50% or of dose, or we can say in this, according to this graph, in human being we need at least 350 rads or 3.5 GYT dose to cause at least 50% lethality rate in human beings. And we have plotted a line as well, and to cause this lethality rate, now we know about the dose, and if the subject has been irradiated to 50% of lethality rate, then definitely those subjects will die within 60 days. Another point that we discussed was that at lower doses, the lethality rate will also be very low, and we don't require any vigorous medical support in that case. But as we increase the dose, then definitely we will be needing vigorous medical support as well to prevent the death of the subjects. But at maximum dosage, above 50% lethality rate, we can say, at maximum doses, for example at 1000 rad or 1 GYT, the lethality rate would also be very high. Another important point that we studied is that we have additional measures as well. First, LD 50/60 is basically the measurement, the quantitative measurement of acute radiation lethality rate, and we have additional measures as well, and we talked about them as well. And those were LD 10/60 and LD 90/60. So we were not changing the survival time, we were basically changing the lethality rate, and we changed the lethality rate to rates to 10% and 90% in LD 10/60 and LD 90/60. Then we studied another additional measure, that was LD 50/30, and in that case we were not changing the lethality rate. Instead, we changed or shortened the survival time, and we shortened it to 30 days instead of 60 days. So our LD/60 50/60 topic is covered, and now we will move on to the next topic. Another very important penguin that is given here this is very important, that the shape of this graph, you can predict that this graph has a non-linear shape, but it has a dose threshold, so we will call this graph as non-linear and threshold graph. So the acute radiation lethality basically follows a non-linear threshold dose response relationship. The next topic that we are going to discuss is the mean survival time, and we will once again look at this graph and we will discuss about the mean survival time. So but what is basically mean survival time? This is as you just studied, that as the radiation dose will increase, the average time between the exposure and death will decrease. So if we will as we will increase the dose, we will require less efforts to cause a death. So the death will be obvious of the subject, and there will be more damage to the cells. So definitely we won't be able to prevent the death as the radiation to the subjects increases. So this is what the mean survival time is. As the whole body radiation dose increases, the average time between the exposure and the death rate decreases, and this time is known as the mean survival time. So if we talk about this graph, then you can see that this graph has three distinct regions that are associated with the three radiation syndromes that we have already discussed, and these are the hematological death, gastrointestinal death, and the central nervous system death. So you can see that as the radiation dose is increasing from 200 to 1000 rad or 2 to 10 GYT, the mean survival time is also decreasing from approximately 60 to 4 days, and this region is consistent with the death resulting from the hematological syndrome. In the GI syndrome, you can see that it is remaining constant, and it is at 4 days. And with larger doses that is associated with the CNS syndrome, the mean survival time is again dose dependent, and it is varying from approximately 3 days to a matter of hours. So if we summarize this topic, then once again, by definition, we studied that this is basically a time that will decrease. First of all, this is the average time between the exposure and the death, and this will decrease as dose will increase. And we have already discussed that the syndromes, there are three major syndromes that can cause the death, and these are the hematological death, gastrointestinal death, and central nervous system death, and these all syndromes are dose dependent. So in this graph, we have divided the graph into three distinct sections, and these sections are the hematological death, gastrointestinal death, and the central nervous system death. And you can see that the shape of the graph is changing with the dose. And if we talk about the first section, that is hematological death, then you can see that as we have increased the dose from 200 to 1000 rad or 2 to 10 GYT, then the time has also decreased, and then now it has come to 4 days from 60 days. In the GI syndrome section, however, the mean survival time is constant, and this is at 4 days. And after that, the last section, if we talk about the CNS death, then you can see that as this is associated with the dose, so by increasing it, the survival time has once again decreased to 3 days to a matter of hours. So that's all for today, and we have covered two topics. We have discussed about the LD50 by 60, which is very important, and the mean survival time. Next, in our next lecture, we will talk about the local tissue damage, and we will cover various topics, subtopics in this. So that's all for today, and if you have any question regarding this lecture, then you can ask. Thank you so much.